honest with you. When this movie first started out, I did not love it. I was nervous. But by the time we got to the end of the movie, and the screen cut to black on a cliffhanger ending with "to be continued" written on the screen, I literally threw my arms up in the air and said no to the screen because I so wanted the story to continue. They got me. They got me good. But the question is, will they get you? I'm not sure. My thoughts on Across the Spider-Verse are complex. But please know that I think there is a very good chance that Sony will once again win Best Animated Feature. I mean, this is truly not just cinema, but art. So yes, the first Spider-Verse did the impossible, beating out both Disney and Pixar. Although what I love those, I didn't love that Wreck-It Ralph, but I loved The Incredibles too. But I mean, come on. So I mean, it was a total understandable win. But it was a big freaking deal in 2018 when that happened. And I believe because of their Oscar win, Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel, dives further into their artistic impulses, which creates a higher form of art, but also something I think which is less accessible to the masses. And that makes me nervous. So I will warn you that if you're not super into comic books, and if you don't have a really solid understanding of Spider-Man comics, just the movies and TV shows aren't going to cut it. You need to know the comics. And if you don't appreciate modern forms of art like comic books and graffiti, you're going to have a very hard time with this movie, or following it at least. I'm nervous, especially because I think the first film was hard for some people to get into. So if you're taking someone who's a normie to this movie, try to prepare them as much as you can. It's also very dark, very sophisticated, and it has that glitch thing that they do for the multiverse in this franchise. Maybe a bit too much. I don't really know if it's for smaller children. I know a lot of younger children have really come to love Miles Morales, which makes me so happy because I love the character. But I don't really know if this is for anyone who's like under 12. I think it's going to be hard to follow. I mean, you got to really be able to become invested. If you have a short attention span, it's going to be tough for you. The heart of the film continues to be Miles Morales, growing up before our eyes, and once again voiced amazingly well by Shameik Moore. Miles Morales is such an outstanding character. I loved him from the minute he was introduced in the comics. Now he's very popular in the movies, in the video game space, and he will soon, you can feel it, surely jump to live action, maybe even in the sequel to this movie. And it will be glorious. And I wish Shameik Moore was trying a little bit harder to make a case for him to play the live-action version. Where is his stylist and his agent and his manager and his publicist? I'd be like, Shameik, you could do it. Don't you want to do it? I really think he deserves a shot. Do you think he could do it? I'm not sure. Maybe. I mean, speaking of Shameik Moore, his breakout role was in Dope, directed by Rick Famuyiwa, who now, of course, is of Star Wars fame. And I don't care what any of you say, I loved his Mando Season 3. He did the final 2 episodes of Season 3. I thought they were movie level good. Love them. And you should watch Dope, by the way. It's quite good. But Rick Famuyiwa, at one point, was going to direct the Flash movie. And you know who else worked on the Flash movie for a while? Mr. Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Misters. And they wrote out an entire treatment for The Flash, which they had at that point intended to maybe direct. But then they made the fateful decision to go to Star Wars, speaking of Star Wars, and do Solo, a Star Wars story instead, which turned out to be a horrible mistake. But clearly, not only did Warner Brothers and DC keep their Flash treatment, but Lord and Miller decided to use a lot of those story points for this movie and passed it on to this creative team because the similarities between the two movies are absolutely shocking. Like, it's ridiculous. Especially when you get to the third act, you're going to be like, how did this happen? It's like Ants, those 2 asteroid movies. It's like that. And they come out 2 weeks apart. It's nuts. It's nuts. And the third act of Spider-Verse, by the way, is so good, it reaches Arcane levels of animation storytelling. It's that good. And if you didn't watch Arcane, I feel bad for you because that's sad. You've missed out on some amazing stuff. And this movie actually gets that good. I can't believe it got that good at the end. I was like, wow, this is as good as Arcane. And if you've seen Arcane, you know that I'm not messing around with that kind of a comment. But I am getting kind of tired of multiverse storytelling. In the middle of this movie, before it got really good, I was like, man, I wish they'd move away from the multiverse already. And it was real dumb for all the franchises to do the multiverse at the same frickin' time. I know some of them might have I know DC technically was going to get there first, but it's too much. And like everybody at every chapter in Marvel's doing it. I mean, they should have just done this in the spider section, quite frankly. It's too much. I don't even like these multiverse stories very much, to be honest with you. Okay? Although what they do here, I like a lot. But anyway, I can't talk about it until we get to the spoiler review. But it was all worth it for the last few minutes of this movie. I was like, oh my God, everything. I'm so happy we did it all. I don't care. The fact that we're here right now is blowing my freaking mind. All right, so also, true to multiverse storytelling, there are some really fun Easter eggs in here that I hope nobody spoils for you. They were great. Speaking of Lord and Miller, they even had a little intro to the screening that they'd filmed saying, you know, you're going to be really pleasantly surprised by some of this stuff, so make sure other people have that same experience. And I hope that you do, because it was delightful. Although if you're not into Spider-Man and comics, I don't really know if you're going to catch all of the Easter eggs, to be honest with you. But I am into Spider-Man. I read the comics, and I thought they were cool. Some of the things normies and casuals will get, and so you'll enjoy those at the very least. So let's talk about my experience watching Across the Spider-Verse. As I said, I did not love the opening, which focuses on Gwen Stacy, who I like very much as a supporting character and as a love interest for Miles. But she just doesn't make for a compelling lead here. Also, the storytelling moves so fast in the beginning. As I'm like, another narrated intro? Oh, I don't care. Just stop. Where's Miles? And the art style glitches so much that it makes it difficult to really focus and become invested in the opening sequence. Also, Gwen Stacy isn't funny. In Spider-Man's humor, a quality which thankfully Shameik Moore's Miles Morales also has. He's not that funny in the comics, but Shameik Moore's Miles Morales is hilarious. I mean, and you really notice how important that humor is to the Spider-Man storytelling when it's not in the intro. You're like, this is super dry. Another thing, like speaking of like details from the comics, they show Gwen Stacy and her band. And as a comic book fan, I was like, oh, cool, that's neat to see Gwen Stacy's band from the comics. But like, if you don't read the comics, do you care? Why take up our time with that? I was like, stop wasting my time. Where's Miles? I also really miss Jake Johnson's Peter B. Parker, who I think was a big part of why the first movie worked, and there isn't nearly enough of him in this movie. Jason Schwartzman, by the way, has a very similar vibe to Jake Johnson. They're really cut from the same cloth. So when we finally catch up to Miles going up against the Spot, the movie starts to finally get going. And you're like, oh yeah, now I remember why I love the first Spider-Verse movie so much. And then, of course, Brian Tyree Henry and Luna Lauren Velez, whose role is substantially bigger here, as Miles' parents, are also integral to his story. And their scenes with Miles are, once again, just so fantastic. I love his family dynamic. I love it so freaking much. Then the movie goes completely off the rails. And it gets a little too multiversey in the middle. Again, I was like, I don't like this multiverse stuff. And also, you know what else? Something that surprised me about the movie is that it got like genuinely dark and scary. I was like, wow, this is dark. And I can't say anything else without spoilers. But again, once we got to the third act, I was just blown away by this film and how Miles Morales continues to evolve as a character and really carve out his own corner of the Spider-Verse with his own mythology. And since he's now an older character, loved aging him up, the cool factor is really starting to come through. I mean, the facial expressions and body language that they give him is just amazing. And I think that audiences who have been starving for strong black male superheroes, especially after Chadwick Boseman's tragic passing. And, you know, T'Challa, of course, had a regal quality to him, which I think made him very admirable, but he didn't have a relatability aspect, which Miles has, I think, in spades. I think so many children of color are going to see themselves in Miles, and adults, and I think that's really exciting. I think a lot of people will be absolutely thrilled with what's delivered here. I just thought he was an amazing character. I was like, wow, what a great character who's becoming so much better by the second. And that cliffhanger ending, boy, wow, my jaw was on the floor. Nobody had spoiled it for me. And I'm just so excited for you to see it so we can discuss it in the spoiler review. And also, I think it really deepens the storytelling even more, which with qualities that I loved from the Miles Morales comic books. So I'm very excited for you to see it so that we can have that discussion. Oh, I love it so much. I can't stand it. All right, so what can we talk about right now without spoilers? How about the rest of the cast? It's a big cast. Of the new cast members, Karen Sony and Daniel Kaluuya are definitely the two standouts. Although at first, Kaluuya's Spider-Punk is speaking in such intense British slang that I honestly had no idea what he was saying. They kind of explained some of it with captions, and also it was kind of hard sometimes to see the captions because the screen is just so busy visually. But I didn't know what he was saying. However, as the movie progressed, the character really was just so freaking cool that I just love him. I love Spider-Punk, and I think the character is done so well here that I would not be surprised if Spider-Punk shows up more in the comics these days as a result of this movie. Either in the Miles Morales comic or gets his own title. I was like, I need more Spider-Punk. Oscar Isaac is very, very good, obviously, as he always is, but I can't speak too much about his performance without spoilers. And I wonder how fans of his character are going to feel, because I think some intense liberties are taken here. And Issa Rae isn't really given much to do, I'm sorry to say. Rachel Dratch, though, manages to make a very strong impression with her short scene as Miles' college counselor. Loved her. As does Amanda Stenberg as Spider-Bite. Cool character. And Andy Samberg gets some quick laughs as Scarlet Spider. Haley Steinfeld, always a delight. But I think the film focuses on her a bit too much. And again, I don't feel she's a lead character. So the extra attention, I think, actually detracts from Gwen Stacy, because you're like, I think you don't want audiences to be like, enough with Gwen Stacy, I'm here for Miles Morales, which I sometimes felt like. She does, though. Once again, once we get to the third act and things really start to pick up, her character does have some nice moments, which the beginning of the movie set up, but I would have preferred more Miles, to be honest with you. Jake Johnson and Jason Schwartzman, again, have a very similar vibe, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting to kind of balance out the Miles Morales family dynamic. And I could have used more Johnson, and it seems Schwartzman, by the way, is only just getting started, and I'm excited to see what happens there. The animation is once again absolutely stunning. This movie belongs in a freaking museum. It's so incredible. But is it more of a work of art, or is it more of a piece of entertainment? I feel it's having a bit of an identity crisis, and I think that it kind of lost the thread a little bit on being a piece of entertainment and a story instead of just like amazing art. I felt like sometimes I was walking around in a museum with different exhibits on the wall rather than like a cohesive story. But the art is incredible. And I was like, I think you're going to get another Oscar, quite frankly. And I think also, on that note, it does more to celebrate the comic books as an art form than anything else, any other adaptations in the movie or series space. And that's really nice for those of us who appreciate that sort of thing. I do think the movie could stand to slow down a bit and not glitch so much. Too many glitches. We get it. It's cool. But, please allow us to focus on the story. The film does have a totally different creative team than it did last time. Bold move after winning an Oscar to totally switch out your creative team. Kemp Powers comes over from Pixar's Soul and One Night in Miami. And I think you can not only sense the added sophistication to the story, but the story, I think, does feel a little more authentic, particularly in some of the things Miles is dealing with as a Black and Latino teenager. Those, to me, seemed great and deeper than the first film. Joaquim Dos Santos, coming over from the frickin' Airbender shows, that's a delight. He does a lot to increase the action and the smooth, intense flow of the story. But I also think he might be responsible for the over-glitching, which I think it takes away from the incredible action sequences that he puts in here. Again, I'm like, it's moving too fast, man. It's moving too fast. As for Justin K. Johnson, he's a former production designer, not only on the first film, but he's done a number of video games as well. And it's a couple of stuff with Lord and Miller in the past. And I blame him for the over-glitching as well. Don't get me wrong, Across the Spider-Verse is definitely high art, but I do worry again that it doesn't have strong commercial appeal. I would have cut the glitching down by like at least 30%. I would have been like, guys, you went too far. It took a while for the first Spider-Verse movie to find an audience, and eventually it did, but only once it got to Netflix. And I'm really glad though, because Spider-Verse, because of that, is tracking for a much bigger opening, and that's exciting. But I just hope that audiences, especially the normies out there, can hang on for what is a very intense inside baseball ride. For us comic book fans, though, oh, you're just going to love it, especially once you get to the end. I'm super excited for part 2 next year. I mean, that is going to be incredible. All right, so that's my non-spoiler review for Across the Spider-Verse. Be sure to come back later this week to discuss that ending. Oh, I hope nobody ruins it for you. Good luck. Put all the mutes on your social media. Be careful. Try to see it as soon as possible. It is just incredible. And don't worry about the beginning. It gets a lot better. All right, so share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.